They had no idea the man they just humiliated in their luxury hotel lobby actually owned the entire chain and was about to expose their shocking discrimination in the most devastating way imaginable. Picture this. A billionaire CEO gets mocked for asking about the presidential suite, threatened with security removal, and treated like a vagrant, all while standing in his own five-star hotel that he built from nothing. But when he reveals his identity using a secret Code Phoenix protocol that sends management into absolute panic, the swift justice that follows will restore your faith in accountability. Watch until the end to see how one man's humiliating encounter sparked a hospitality revolution that's transforming luxury travel across America. This isn't just about racial profiling in hotels. It's proof that even our most painful experiences can become the catalyst for extraordinary change that protects millions of travelers who deserve to be treated with dignity.
They had no idea the man they just humiliated in their luxury hotel lobby actually owned the entire chain and was about to expose their shocking discrimination in the most devastating way imaginable. Meet Julian Hayes, a name that should command instant recognition in every hospitality boardroom across America, yet remains invisible to those who judge worthiness by appearance rather than achievement. At 39 years old, this visionary entrepreneur has accomplished what most hoteliers only dream of, transforming a single rundown motel in Detroit into Aura Hospitality Group, a luxury empire worth $4.2 billion that operates over 300 premium hotels across 48 states. His flagship property, the Aura Grand Chicago, stands as a monument to elegance and service excellence in the heart of the Magnificent Mile. But Julian's journey to the pinnacle of luxury hospitality wasn't paved with privilege or family connections. Growing up in East Detroit, he watched his grandmother work double shifts as a hotel housekeeper, coming home exhausted and often humiliated by guests and management who treated her as invisible, despite her dedication to creating perfect experiences for others. Those childhood memories of seeing his grandmother's dignity stripped away in spaces where she gave everything created an unshakable determination to build something different. Hotels where exceptional service would be matched by exceptional respect for every human being who walked through the doors. Starting with that single failing motel that nobody else wanted, Julian revolutionized the industry by proving that genuine hospitality could coexist with luxury, that treating staff with dignity actually enhanced rather than diminished the guest experience. His hotels became legendary, not just for their opulent accommodations and world-class amenities, but for their commitment to creating inclusive environments where both employees and guests felt valued and respected regardless of their background or appearance. Today represents one of Julian's most crucial business practices: unannounced quality assessments that reveal the true character of his hotel operations. Unlike corporate inspections announced weeks in advance, Julian appears without warning, dressed as an ordinary traveler, to experience firsthand whether his staff uphold the values of dignity and respect that define the Aura brand. These covert evaluations have become essential to maintaining the integrity of his hospitality empire, ensuring that his name and reputation are only associated with establishments that honor every guest.
This particular afternoon, Julian has chosen to visit the Aura Grand Chicago, the crown jewel of his collection and the property he personally designed to showcase the absolute pinnacle of luxury hospitality. Walking through the stunning cathedral-like lobby with its soaring marble columns, crystal chandeliers, and artwork worth millions, Julian carries only a worn backpack and wears a simple gray hoodie, clothing deliberately chosen to test whether his staff judge guests by potential rather than appearance. As Julian approaches the gleaming reception desk, where fresh orchids and gold accents create an atmosphere of understated elegance, he has no idea that the next 15 minutes will expose the very prejudices he's spent his career fighting against. The employees behind that magnificent desk are about to make assumptions that will not only cost them their careers, but reveal how deeply discrimination can penetrate even the most carefully crafted luxury environments. The man who built this empire from nothing, who personally approved every detail of this hotel's design, who signs the paychecks of every employee in the building, is about to be treated like an unwelcome intruder in his own masterpiece. But what his staff doesn't realize is that their prejudiced assumptions are about to trigger consequences that will transform not just their lives, but the entire hospitality industry's approach to dignity and respect. If you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of how much money they appear to have, if you've ever been judged by your appearance rather than your character, then hit that like button, because Julian's story is about to expose how discrimination operates in America's most exclusive spaces. Comment below if you've experienced bias while traveling, and subscribe to our channel because we're revealing the uncomfortable truths about prejudice in luxury hospitality while celebrating the leaders who refuse to accept the status quo. Right at that moment, as Julian joined the line behind a couple dripping in designer labels and flashing expensive jewelry, he stepped directly into a masterclass on how assumptions about worthiness can transform exceptional hospitality into cruel discrimination. The Aura Grand Chicago's reception area buzzed with the refined energy that Julian had meticulously designed to make every guest feel like royalty. Behind the polished marble counter, young front desk agent Tiffany Morrison embodied everything the luxury hospitality industry claimed to represent, impeccably groomed, professionally dressed, and radiating the kind of polished confidence that wealthy guests expected from five-star establishments. But as Julian watched her interact with the affluent couple ahead of him, he witnessed a performance that revealed the dark side of hospitality excellence. "Mr. and Mrs. Wellington, welcome back to the Aura Grand Chicago," Tiffany gushed with genuine enthusiasm, her smile so warm and authentic that it could have melted ice. "We've prepared your usual penthouse suite with the champagne service you love, and I've already arranged for your favorite restaurant reservations. Is there anything else we can do to make your stay absolutely perfect?" The contrast in treatment became immediately obvious when the Wellingtons moved away and Tiffany's attention turned to Julian. Her radiant smile vanished as if someone had flipped a switch, replaced by a cold professional mask that conveyed tolerance rather than welcome. Her eyes swept over Julian's casual clothing with barely concealed disapproval, taking in his worn backpack and simple hoodie with the kind of assessment typically reserved for potential security threats. "Can I help you?" asked Tiffany, her tone carrying subtle but unmistakable implications that Julian's presence was an interruption rather than an opportunity to provide exceptional service. The words were technically polite, but the delivery suggested that she was already preparing to direct him somewhere else, anywhere else, that would be more appropriate for someone of his apparent social status. Julian approached the counter with the same friendly demeanor he used with everyone, extending the benefit of the doubt that had served him well throughout his rise in the hospitality industry. "Good afternoon. I'd like to check in, please. The reservation should be under Julian Hayes." His request was simple, straightforward, and delivered with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of successful business interactions. But Tiffany's response revealed that she had already made judgments about Julian's worthiness that would color every aspect of their interaction. She turned to her computer with obvious reluctance, her fingers moving across the keyboard with the kind of theatrical typing that suggested she was going through the motions rather than genuinely searching for his reservation. After what seemed like an unnecessarily long search, Tiffany looked up with a smirk that barely concealed her satisfaction. "Sir, we don't seem to have a reservation for you in our system," she announced with the tone of someone delivering expected bad news.
Are you absolutely sure you're at the right hotel? Maybe you're thinking of one of the budget properties down the street that would be a better fit for your needs. The suggestion that Julian belonged at a budget hotel rather than the luxury establishment he had personally designed to welcome everyone with dignity and respect was devastating in its casual cruelty. Tiffany had made assumptions about his financial capacity, his social status, and his worthiness as a guest based solely on his appearance, dismissing him as someone who had obviously made a mistake in thinking he could afford five-star accommodations. The phrase, better fit for your needs, carried clear implications about who belonged in elite hospitality establishments and who didn't. Julian found himself being categorized as someone unworthy of luxury service, despite standing in a lobby he had personally designed to welcome everyone with dignity and respect. What Tiffany didn't realize was that her dismissive treatment was about to trigger a chain of events that would expose the ugly reality of hospitality discrimination and cost her everything she thought she was protecting.
What happened next would transform Tiffany's dismissive suggestion into something far more humiliating, as Julian's calm persistence triggered a response that exposed the toxic assumptions underlying luxury hospitality's exclusionary practices. Despite the obvious slight, Julian maintained the diplomatic composure that had served him well in countless challenging business situations. He understood that great leaders don't win through confrontation, but through patience and strategic thinking. "I'm quite certain I booked the presidential suite," he said calmly, his voice carrying quiet confidence rather than defensiveness. "Could you please check your system again? Sometimes reservations are filed under different confirmation numbers." But Julian's mention of the presidential suite triggered something far worse than simple dismissal. It sparked open mockery from Tiffany, who clearly believed she was dealing with someone living in complete fantasy. Her laugh was sharp and cruel, the kind of sound that cuts through elegant hotel lobbies and makes other guests turn to stare. "The presidential suite," she repeated with obvious derision. "Sir, that's $10,000 per night. We require a credit check and full payment in advance just to book it." The implication was clear and devastating. Someone who looked like Julian, dressed as he was, could never afford such luxury. Tiffany had moved beyond suggesting he belonged elsewhere to openly mocking his audacity in even mentioning premium accommodations. Her laughter carried the cruel confidence of someone who believed she was exposing a ridiculous lie. But Julian's response revealed the strategic thinking that had built his hospitality empire. Rather than becoming defensive or angry, he calmly placed his phone on the marble counter, its screen facing up where Tiffany could see it. The appliance was expensive, clearly top of the line, but more importantly, it represented Julian's preparation for exactly this kind of situation. "I understand your policies completely," Julian said, with the patience of someone accustomed to being underestimated. "Could you please call your manager? I'd like to speak with someone who can resolve this situation professionally." His request was reasonable, delivered without hostility, but carried an undertone that suggested he wasn't going anywhere until this was handled properly. The sight of Julian's expensive phone and his calm insistence on speaking with management began to plant seeds of uncertainty in Tiffany's mind. His calm composure under pressure, his lack of anger despite her obvious rudeness, and his confident request for escalation didn't match her assumptions about someone she'd dismissed as unable to afford luxury accommodations. "Fine," Tiffany replied with obvious irritation, reaching for the house phone with theatrical reluctance. "But I'm warning you now, our management doesn't tolerate people who waste our time with false claims and impossible demands. When they ask you to leave, I expect you to go quietly without causing a scene." As Tiffany made the call that would bring her manager into this rapidly escalating situation, Julian quietly activated his phone's recording function. His years in business had taught him that documentation was essential when dealing with discrimination, and he wanted every word of what was about to unfold preserved for posterity. Other guests in the lobby began to notice the tension at the front desk, some looking uncomfortable with the obvious differential treatment they were witnessing. Julian's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Tiffany's hostility, creating a scene that would soon attract the attention of someone with the authority to either resolve this situation professionally or escalate it into a career-ending catastrophe. What Tiffany didn't realize was that her next decision to involve management would trigger consequences that would expose her bias to the entire luxury hospitality industry and beyond.
But what emerged from the back office would transform this confrontation from simple rudeness into a coordinated campaign of discrimination that exposed the most toxic assumptions about who deserves luxury service in America. Within minutes of Tiffany's call, hotel manager Kyle Spencer made his entrance with the kind of theatrical confidence that immediately commanded attention throughout the elegant lobby. At 32 years old, Spencer embodied everything wrong with luxury hospitality management: arrogant, entitled, and convinced that his authority came from excluding rather than welcoming guests. His expensive suit and perfectly styled hair projected success, but his eyes revealed the cold calculation of someone who saw people as problems to be solved rather than guests to be served. Spencer approached the front desk with the swagger of someone who believed he was about to handle an annoying disruption to his perfectly ordered establishment. He didn't even make eye contact with Julian, instead leaning close to Tiffany for a whispered consultation that was deliberately loud enough for Julian and nearby guests to overhear. "So this is the guy causing problems?" Spencer asked with obvious disdain, claiming he has a presidential suite reservation he obviously can't afford. The way Spencer discussed Julian as if he weren't standing right there revealed everything about his approach to customer service and human dignity. He had already decided Julian was a problem to be eliminated rather than a guest to be assisted, and his body language communicated contempt that went far beyond professional disappointment. When Spencer finally turned to address Julian directly, his tone carried the condescending authority of someone convinced he was dealing with a troublemaker who needed to be removed quickly and decisively. "Look, sir, my staff has informed me of the situation," he said, his voice carrying throughout the marble lobby. "We have standards to maintain at the Aura Grand Chicago. We can't have people loitering in our lobby, making unrealistic demands, and disrupting the experience for our legitimate guests." The phrase "legitimate guests" hung in the air like poison, clearly implying that Julian didn't qualify for that category. Spencer's message was unmistakable. Julian's presence was contaminating the refined atmosphere that wealthy guests expected, and his removal was necessary to preserve the hotel's exclusionary standards. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I call security," Spencer continued, his voice rising loud enough to attract attention from across the lobby. As if summoned by his authority, 2 security guards began moving closer, their presence designed to intimidate Julian into compliance rather than provide actual protection. The coordinated nature of the response, Tiffany's initial dismissal, Spencer's arrogant intervention, the security guard's threatening presence revealed a systematic approach to excluding guests who didn't fit their narrow expectations of what wealth and worthiness looked like. This wasn't isolated bias from one employee, it was institutional discrimination, operating exactly as designed. Other hotel guests began pulling out their phones, some recording what they sensed was an increasingly volatile situation, others texting about the confrontation they were witnessing. The elegant lobby that Julian had designed to make everyone feel welcome had become a stage for public humiliation, with his own employees orchestrating his exclusion from a space he had created. Spencer's confident threat to call security represented the moment when this situation would either be resolved through reason or escalated into something that would destroy careers and expose the ugly reality of discrimination in luxury hospitality.
If this story is making your blood boil, if you're feeling the injustice of watching someone's dignity being stripped away based on appearance alone, then hit that like button because Julian's response is about to change everything. Comment below if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong somewhere you had every right to be. And subscribe to our channel because what happens next will prove that truth and justice can still prevail when courage meets the right moment.
Right at that moment, when the humiliation had reached its absolute peak and security guards loomed threateningly close, Julian demonstrated the strategic brilliance that had built his hospitality empire by speaking words that would change everything forever. Facing the security guards with the kind of calm that comes from absolute confidence, Julian didn't flinch or step backward. Instead, he looked Kyle Spencer dead in the eye with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through the manager's arrogant facade. The entire lobby held its breath as Julian prepared to either surrender to this coordinated discrimination or reveal something that would turn this nightmare completely upside down. "Before you do that," Julian said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made everyone within earshot stop what they were doing, "I suggest you get your regional director, Maria Flores, on the phone immediately." The mention of a specific name, delivered with such confidence, sent the first ripple of uncertainty through Spencer's previously unshakable arrogance. But Julian wasn't finished delivering what would become the most devastating verbal bomb in luxury hospitality history. "Tell her that Mr. Hayes is in the lobby," he continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "and he's initiating a Code Phoenix review of this entire operation." The effect of those words was immediate and electrifying. Spencer's face went completely white, as if all the blood had drained from his body in a single instant. Tiffany actually gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth in horror as the implications of what she had just heard began to crash down on her like a tsunami of realization. The name Hayes wasn't just any name in the Aura hospitality universe. It was the mythical founder's surname, spoken in hushed, reverent tones throughout the company like a legend that employees hoped they would never encounter in person. And Code Phoenix wasn't just corporate jargon, it was a legendary top-level audit protocol that existed only in whispered stories among hotel staff. A nuclear option that could end careers and close properties with devastating swiftness. Spencer's hands began to tremble as he processed what Julian had just revealed. Code Phoenix was the stuff of nightmares in hospitality management circles, a comprehensive review that could only be initiated by ownership-level authority and typically resulted in mass terminations and complete operational overhauls. The fact that this casually dressed man knew the exact terminology and spoke with such confidence about contacting regional leadership suggested something far more terrifying than Spencer's worst-case scenarios. You can't be," Spencer stammered, his previous arrogance crumbling into desperate hope that this was all some elaborate joke or misunderstanding. But the specific details Julian had provided, Maria Flores's exact title, the Code Phoenix protocol, the confident mention of ownership authority, were impossible for any ordinary guest to know. Tiffany looked like she was about to faint as the magnitude of her mistake began to register. She had dismissed, mocked, and humiliated someone who might actually be the legendary founder of the entire hotel chain. The presidential suite reservation she had laughed at, the $10,000 nightly rate she had used to mock his financial capacity, the budget hotel suggestions she had made with such cruel satisfaction, all of it suddenly seemed like career suicide rather than customer service.
The security guards, who had been prepared to forcibly remove Julian just moments before, now stood frozen in uncertainty. Their training had prepared them to handle disruptive guests, not to potentially manhandle the owner of the entire company. The confident authority they had projected when backing up Spencer's demands now evaporated as they realized they might be on the verge of committing career-ending assault. Other guests in the lobby began to sense the dramatic shift in power dynamics, their phones capturing every moment of what was clearly becoming a historic confrontation. The elegant marble space that Julian had designed to showcase hospitality excellence had become the stage for exposing its complete failure, with his own employees providing unwitting documentation of their discrimination and incompetence. Spencer's desperate attempt to maintain control revealed just how completely the situation had slipped away from him. "Sir, we need to verify. Anyone could claim," he stuttered, his previous confidence replaced by the frantic scrambling of someone who realized he might have just destroyed his entire career through arrogance and prejudice. But the most telling moment came when Spencer actually reached for the house phone with shaking hands, clearly torn between hoping Julian was lying and terrified that he was telling the absolute truth. The internal debate playing out on Spencer's face was visible to everyone watching. Should he call Maria Flores and risk confirming that he had just humiliated the company founder, or refuse and potentially make an already catastrophic situation even worse? Julian stood perfectly still during this moment of truth, his calm composure contrasting sharply with the panic spreading through the hotel staff like wildfire. He had revealed his hand at exactly the right moment, using surgical precision to deploy information that would either resolve this situation immediately or trigger consequences that would destroy everyone who had participated in his humiliation. The next 60 seconds would determine whether Julian was truly who he claimed to be and whether Spencer, Tiffany, and their colleagues would still have jobs by the end of the day.
What happened next would become the most dramatic power reversal in luxury hospitality history, as the truth about Julian's identity exploded through the lobby like a bomb that shattered every assumption his tormentors had made. The agonizing seconds that followed Spencer's trembling phone call felt like hours to everyone watching this unprecedented confrontation unfold. The elegant lobby, designed for refined conversation and welcoming gestures, had become a pressure cooker of tension where careers hung in the balance and the very foundation of the hotel's hierarchy was about to be blown apart. Kyle Spencer's voice cracked as he spoke into the phone with desperate urgency. "Maria, this is Kyle at the Grand Chicago. We have a situation in the lobby. There's a man here claiming to be Mr. Hayes, and he's mentioned Code Phoenix. I need you here immediately." The way he delivered the message revealed his frantic hope that this was all an elaborate hoax, coupled with his growing terror that it might be absolutely real. But the response that came through the phone speaker was so immediate and panic-stricken that it could be heard throughout the marble reception area. "What?" Maria Flores' voice exploded through the device with such alarm that several guests actually jumped. "Mr. Hayes is there? Oh my God, Kyle, what have you done? I'm leaving my office right now. Do not let him leave. Do not do anything else. Just apologize and keep him there." The line went dead, leaving Spencer staring at the phone like it was a weapon that had just exploded in his hands. Maria's reaction had confirmed Julian's identity beyond any doubt. Her immediate panic, her frantic instructions, her obvious terror at the implications of the situation left no room for misunderstanding. Tiffany actually started crying as the full magnitude of her mistake crashed down on her like an avalanche. She had mocked the founder of the entire hotel chain, suggested he belonged at budget motels, laughed at his mention of the presidential suite, accommodations that he had personally designed and could occupy any time he chose. Her career in luxury hospitality wasn't just over, it was destroyed so completely that she would never work in the industry again. The transformation in Spencer's demeanor was immediate and devastating to witness. All his arrogance, his dismissive authority, his confident threats evaporated in an instant, replaced by the kind of panic typically reserved for natural disasters.
Mr. Hayes, sir, we had no idea. Please accept our most sincere, he stammered, his previous contempt replaced by desperate pleading. But Julian remained perfectly calm, watching the panic spread through his staff with the analytical eye of someone who had just witnessed the complete failure of everything he had built his company to represent. The man who had been dismissed as unworthy of basic courtesy just minutes before now commanded absolute terror simply by revealing his name.
Exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds after Maria's panicked phone call, the lobby's elevator doors opened with their familiar chime, and Regional Director Maria Flores emerged like a woman possessed. Her usually perfect professional appearance was disheveled from her frantic rush to reach the hotel, her face pale with the kind of terror that comes from realizing you might be witnessing the end of your career. She sprinted across the marble floor with undignified desperation, her expensive heels clicking frantically as she pushed past confused guests and hotel staff. When she reached Julian, she didn't even acknowledge Spencer or Tiffany. Her entire focus was on damage control for what she clearly recognized as a catastrophic corporate crisis. "Mr. Hayes!" she gasped, slightly out of breath from her sprint through the building. "Sir, my deepest, most sincere apologies. I had no idea you were conducting an inspection today. If I had known you were here, none of this would have happened." Her immediate recognition of Julian, her obvious respect and deference, and her frantic apologies provided the final irrefutable confirmation that everything Julian had claimed was absolutely true. The man who had been threatened with security removal was indeed the visionary founder of the entire Aura hospitality empire. The lobby erupted in whispered conversations as other guests began to understand what they were witnessing. Phones that had been recording what seemed like a customer service dispute were now capturing one of the most dramatic corporate confrontations in hospitality history. The elegant space designed for discreet luxury had become the stage for a public execution of careers and reputations. Spencer and Tiffany stood frozen like deer in headlights, finally understanding that they hadn't just mistreated a difficult customer, they had publicly humiliated their ultimate boss, the man whose vision had created their jobs and whose values they had utterly betrayed. The security guards who had been prepared to physically remove Julian now looked like they wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Julian's calm response to Maria's frantic apologies revealed the kind of leadership that had built a hospitality empire from nothing. "Maria, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about the culture and training at this property," he said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who was about to reshape an entire organization. "What I've experienced here today represents a complete failure of everything Aura Hospitality claims to stand for." The reckoning was about to begin, and it would be swift, decisive, and absolutely devastating for everyone who participated in this shameful display of discrimination and arrogance.
What followed next was a masterclass in swift, transformative justice that would send shockwaves through the entire hospitality industry and prove that discrimination comes with real, immediate consequences that change lives forever. Julian looked directly at Maria Flores, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had just witnessed the complete betrayal of everything he had built his company to represent. "Maria, I want you to document exactly what occurred here today, because we're about to implement changes that will ensure this level of discrimination never happens again at any Aura property." He gestured toward the staff members who were now trembling with the realization that their careers were about to end. "These employees dismissed me based on my appearance, mocked my reservation claims, threatened me with security removal, and created a hostile environment that violates every principle our company was founded upon." The terminations began immediately and without ceremony.
each one delivered with the precision of someone who understood that swift action was the only appropriate response to such blatant discrimination. "Kyle Spencer," Julian announced, his voice carrying throughout the elegant lobby, "your employment as hotel manager is terminated effective immediately. Your arrogant dismissal of guests based on appearance, your threats to call security without cause, and your complete failure to uphold Aura Hospitality's values of dignity and respect make you unfit to represent our brand." Spencer opened his mouth to protest, perhaps to offer some desperate explanation or apology, but Julian continued with unwavering resolve. "You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and surrender all company property. Your access to Aura systems has been permanently revoked, and security will escort you from the building you clearly don't understand how to manage." But Julian's approach to justice revealed the sophisticated thinking that had built his hospitality empire. Rather than simply destroying careers through anger, he implemented consequences that matched the severity of each person's actions and their potential for redemption. "Tiffany Morrison," he continued, his tone shifting slightly, "your behavior today was unacceptable. But I believe in second chances for people willing to learn and grow." Tiffany looked up through her tears, hardly daring to hope that she might escape the complete career destruction she had assumed was inevitable. "You will not be fired," Julian said, causing visible relief to wash over her face, "but you will be demoted from front desk agent and reassigned to a 3-month mandatory training program at our airport location. You'll learn genuine hospitality, empathy, and how to treat every guest with dignity regardless of their appearance." The creative nature of Tiffany's consequence sent ripples of surprise through the watching crowd. "Your future with Aura Hospitality depends entirely on your ability to pass this retraining program and demonstrate real personal growth. This is your one opportunity to prove that today's behavior was a mistake you're committed to never repeating."
But the most powerful moment came when Julian turned his attention to someone who had been overlooked during the entire confrontation. "Leo Martinez," he called out to a quiet bellhop who had been standing near the luggage area, watching the drama unfold with obvious concern. Leo approached hesitantly, clearly confused about why he was being summoned during what appeared to be a corporate crisis. "Sir?" he asked uncertainly, his humble demeanor contrasting sharply with the arrogance that Julian had just witnessed from the management team. "Earlier today, when I first entered this lobby, you offered me a bottle of water and directions to the restroom," Julian said, his voice warm with genuine appreciation. "Tiffany shushed you and told you to mind your own business, but you showed me the kind of genuine hospitality that Aura Hospitality was built to represent." Leo's eyes widened as he realized he was being recognized for what he had assumed was an insignificant gesture. "Effective immediately, you're promoted to front desk supervisor in training," Julian announced, causing gasps of surprise throughout the lobby. "You'll receive full management training, a substantial salary increase, and the opportunity to help rebuild the culture of genuine service that this property has clearly lost." The transformation from invisible bellhop to management track in a matter of minutes demonstrated Julian's commitment to rewarding authentic hospitality values rather than simply punishing discrimination. Leo's promotion sent a powerful message that genuine kindness and respect would be recognized and elevated within the Aura organization. Julian's final announcement would reshape the entire hospitality landscape. "Today also marks the launch of the Aura Access Fund," he declared, his voice carrying the passion that had driven him from a single failing motel to a luxury empire. "We're dedicating 5% of this hotel's annual profits to provide luxury travel experiences for underprivileged families who have never had the opportunity to experience 5-star hospitality." The crowd of guests who had witnessed this unprecedented confrontation burst into spontaneous applause.
Many were recording with their phones, capturing not just the dramatic justice they had witnessed, but the positive transformation that was emerging from what had started as discrimination and humiliation. Maria Flores was already coordinating the immediate operational changes, calling in management staff from other properties to ensure the hotel could continue operating smoothly during this transition. The swift, decisive action demonstrated why Aura Hospitality had become such a successful organization under Julian's leadership. As Spencer was escorted from the building by security, his career in hospitality management effectively ended. Julian was already planning something far more comprehensive than simple personnel changes. A complete transformation of how the luxury travel industry addresses bias and creates truly inclusive experiences for all guests.
What Julian did next would not only transform the Aura Grand Chicago, but spark a revolution in luxury hospitality that would change how the entire industry treats guests and defines true five-star service. Standing in the marble lobby where he had just witnessed the complete failure of his company's values, Julian made a decision that would reshape the hospitality landscape forever. He walked directly to the front desk where Leo Martinez now stood, still processing his sudden promotion from invisible bellhop to management trainee. With cameras still recording and guests watching in fascination, Julian began what would become the most powerful demonstration of leadership the luxury travel industry had ever witnessed. "Leo," Julian said warmly, placing his hand on the young man's shoulder, "I'd like you to personally handle my check-in to the presidential suite. This will be your first official act as a front desk supervisor in training." The symbolic nature of this moment wasn't lost on anyone present. The founder of the company was entrusting his own reservation to someone who had shown genuine kindness rather than practiced arrogance. As Leo nervously but carefully processed Julian's reservation with the kind of authentic care that no training manual could teach, Julian addressed the crowd of guests, employees, and media representatives who had gathered to witness this unprecedented transformation. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed here today represents everything that's wrong with luxury hospitality in America," he began, his voice carrying the passion that had driven him to build an empire dedicated to genuine service. "For too long, our industry has confused exclusion with excellence, discrimination with standards, and arrogance with authority. We've created environments where people are judged by their appearance rather than treated with the dignity every human being deserves." His words resonated throughout the elegant space, transforming what had been a site of humiliation into a platform for revolutionary change. Julian's next announcement would establish new standards that competing hotels would struggle to match. Today, the Aura Grand Chicago becomes the flagship for a new kind of luxury hospitality, one that measures success not by who we exclude, but how we make everyone feel valued and respected. The commitment in his voice made it clear this wasn't corporate rhetoric, but a fundamental shift in how his company would operate. "Effective immediately, every Aura property will implement the Hayes Protocol," Julian declared, naming the initiative after his own experience of discrimination. "This comprehensive program includes mandatory bias training for all staff, mystery shopper programs that test our commitment to equal treatment, and financial incentives that reward employees for demonstrating genuine hospitality to all guests regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth."
The Aura Access Fund that Julian had mentioned earlier was just the beginning of his transformation initiative. This fund will provide all expenses-paid luxury vacations for families from underserved communities, scholarship programs for diverse students pursuing hospitality careers, and grants for minority-owned travel businesses, he explained. Because true luxury means creating experiences that celebrate diversity rather than enforce exclusion. 6 months later, the results of Julian's transformation exceeded even his ambitious expectations. The Aura Grand Chicago had become a pilgrimage site for hospitality professionals studying inclusive service excellence. Leo Martinez had not only passed his management training with distinction, but had been promoted to assistant front office manager, becoming a powerful advocate for authentic hospitality throughout the organization. Tiffany Morrison's journey through the retraining program had been remarkable to witness. Working at the airport location, she had learned to see every traveler as a valued guest, regardless of their appearance, destination, or perceived social status. Her transformation from dismissive gatekeeper to genuine hospitality professional demonstrated that people could change when given proper guidance and second chances. The broader impact of the Hays Protocol rippled throughout the luxury travel industry like a tsunami of positive change. Competing hotel chains began implementing similar anti-discrimination programs after facing pressure from customers who had heard about Aura's revolutionary approach. Travel review sites started rating hotels on their inclusivity practices alongside traditional amenities. Hospitality schools began requiring bias awareness training as part of their core curriculum. Julian's story became required reading in business schools, civil rights organizations, and corporate leadership programs as an example of how individual courage could transform entire industries. But for Julian, the most meaningful validation came from the letters he received from families who had experienced luxury travel for the first time through the Aura Access Fund, and from employees like Leo who had discovered that genuine kindness could open doors they never imagined possible. The transformation of the Aura Grand Chicago's culture was perhaps the most remarkable achievement of all. The lobby that had once been a site of discrimination had become a beacon of inclusive hospitality, where every guest was welcomed with authentic warmth, regardless of their background or appearance. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs as staff members discovered the joy of creating positive experiences rather than enforcing exclusionary barriers. A 5-star rating isn't about marble floors or crystal chandeliers, Julian said during his final address to the hotel staff as they completed their cultural transformation. It's about making every single person who walks through our doors feel like they are priceless. We failed that standard today, but we won't fail tomorrow or any day after that. His words captured the essence of what true luxury hospitality could become when guided by values of dignity, respect, and genuine human connection rather than prejudice and exclusion. Your character is defined by your title or your wealth, but by how you treat someone who you think has none. What would you have done if you witnessed Julian's treatment today? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story inspired you to believe that change is possible when courage meets opportunity, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove justice and transformation are still achievable in our world.
Julian Hays' story reveals a painful truth about luxury hospitality in America, that exclusion often masquerades as excellence, and discrimination hides behind the language of standards and sophistication. What makes this story truly powerful isn't just the dramatic reveal or the swift justice, but how Julian transformed his personal humiliation into protection for millions of travelers who will never know his name but will benefit from his courage to demand systemic change. The real lesson here goes deeper than employee training or corporate policies. It's about understanding that when we witness discrimination, we have a choice. We can be like Leo Martinez, who showed authentic kindness despite being told to mind his own business. Or we can be silent bystanders who allow prejudice to flourish in spaces where everyone deserves dignity. Julian didn't just fire discriminatory employees, he rebuilt entire systems because he understood that lasting change requires more than punishment. It demands transformation. From an insider's perspective, what Julian accomplished with the Hays Protocol represents something revolutionary in luxury hospitality. Most hotels respond to discrimination incidents with damage control and superficial sensitivity training.
Julian responded by fundamentally altering how five-star service operates, creating the Aura Access Fund that provides luxury experiences to underserved communities, and establishing standards that reward authentic hospitality over exclusionary gatekeeping. The most profound truth in this story is that our worst experiences can become our greatest opportunities to protect others. Julian could have quietly handled this incident behind closed doors and moved on with his empire. Instead, he chose to use his platform, his resources, and his influence to ensure that what happened to him would never happen to anyone else in luxury travel. That's the difference between revenge and justice, between anger and action, between being a victim and being a catalyst for industry-wide transformation. But here's what we all need to understand. Julian Hayes shouldn't have to be a billionaire hotel owner to receive basic respect while checking into accommodations. The fact that it took revealing massive authority to stop discrimination shows us how much work remains in creating truly inclusive hospitality experiences. Every time we choose silence over speaking up, every time we accept that's just how luxury hotels work, we are enabling the very systems that create these humiliating moments. True five-star service should celebrate the diversity of people who appreciate exceptional experiences, not serve as gatekeeping mechanisms that determine worthiness based on appearance or assumptions about wealth. Julian's courage proved that when we refuse to accept discrimination as normal in luxury spaces, when we use our platforms to demand better, we can create ripple effects that transform entire industries and protect countless travelers who face similar challenges. If this story moved you, if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of how much money they appear to have, then your voice matters in this fight. Hit that like button to show YouTube that stories about justice and transformation deserve to reach more people who need to hear them. Drop a comment sharing your own experiences with travel discrimination, or telling us what change you want to see in the hospitality industry, because real transformation starts with real conversations about uncomfortable truths. And please subscribe to this channel, because we're committed to sharing more stories that expose injustice while celebrating the leaders who refuse to accept that's just how things are. Together, we can ensure that Julian's courage creates the lasting change our travel experiences desperately need.